Commander Skywalker. So you're the young man who destroyed the Death Star.
Star Wars Month enters a low-polygon world many thought they would never see again. This is Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3D. You know, I had another script for this game. I had it written up, recorded, and I was editing away in Sony Vegas when I discovered that some of my Elgato footage had been corrupted. Seeing as Rogue Squadron lets you revisit every mission individually, I had the chance to re-record them, but I had forgotten where I put my shortcut. So I just looked up the game's executable. And that's when I found out something very important. There are two executables. One appears to be the game's original executable, and runs terribly. It doesn't register triggers on modern controllers, it bugs in and out when loading and going between cutscenes, and is prone to crashing and black screens whenever you try to alt-tab out of it for any reason. It's a complete mess. Nothing like what you'd expect from a good old game restoration. The other executable, however, which is for some reason not linked to the shortcut, has practically none of these issues. I had one menu glitch. One. That's it. It was a world of difference. So before anything else is said, if you already own the game on goodoldgames.com or are planning to buy it on there, be sure to use the longer named executable. It's about the only way to experience the game properly. With all that said, on with the review. Rogue Squadron 3D is one of the oldest and most iconic Star Wars games. It was the arcadey, action-heavy brother to Star Wars TIE Fighter's more grounded, simulation-like gameplay. It also was, at the time, one of the most graphically impressive N64 games. It was later brought to PC, and is sadly the only Rogue Squadron game to have done so. All subsequent entries went to the GameCube, so this is all we ever got to play. But it still felt awesome at the time. However, upon recent inspection, you begin to realize that it hasn't aged as gracefully as series fans would hope. For one thing, the difficulty is just absurdly high. You're not supposed to simply play the game through from beginning to end, but masochistically play through 3 to 8 minute long missions over and over until you perfect your run. You have to learn every twist and turn of a level before proceeding, and unlike something like Super Meat Boy, Rogue Squadron is very unforgiving. You have a set number of lives that cannot be replenished, and you can lose more than half your health in a single ill-timed blow, on top of enemies firing at you with sometimes near aimbot levels of accuracy. At the time, this arcade sensibility wasn't that unusual, but nowadays it makes the cheat codes seem like a balance patch rather than actual cheats. Having infinite lives to retry a mission, lock-on missiles, and access to the full suite of vehicles wouldn't be considered that odd these days, but Rogue Squadron doesn't care. Even when you get a gold medal, the highest reward for finishing a mission, the game plays a song of disappointment. It's like a judgmental parent. I haven't played a game this eager to undercut your success for completing a level since Rayman Origins or Yoshi's Woolly World. So the only way to have fun in Rogue Squadron is to ignore all the medals and the game's idea of balance, and just play around in it. The second you stop worrying about having a perfect run is the moment Rogue Squadron becomes fun. When you ignore all its judgmental bullcrap and just enjoy the sensation you used to have with playing Star Wars Micro Machines, you remember why Rogue Squadron became an iconic series in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. The heavily compressed, yet still remarkably catchy renditions of classic and new Star Wars compositions play as missile launchers give you warning beeps that tell you to take evasive action. It's almost Pavlovian when you finally get into it. Even the cheesy voiceovers that make you roll your eyes are still that perfect level of 90s silliness. It's all there.
Look at the size of that thing.
Cut the chatter. Wedge, hold him off as best you can. Rogues, we're gonna have company real soon. Inbound fighters at 10:13. I copy you. Help me out here.
That said, Rogue Squadron still won't be for everyone. It only lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours to beat, and it features very few notable battles from the movies due to LucasArts insisting that developer Factor 5 focus on a separate, original storyline set between episodes 4 and 5. While you can play through the Death Star trench run and the Battle of Hoth by unlocking them, they both feel very hastily cut together, lacking almost any unique voiceovers, which makes me wonder if they were slipped under the radar before the executives at LucasArts noticed. Also, the game has some of the most aggravating escort missions you'll ever experience. Your mission on Fest requires you to protect 3 of the weakest units in the game from being destroyed by turrets, 3 different AT-ATs, bombers, and ground troops, all in the span of 5 minutes or less. No pressure! No pressure whatsoever. This is made all the more meddlesome by the awful controls for taking down AT-ATs. You suddenly have to use X and Y for your control throttles rather than the triggers, and the camera spontaneously becomes drunk. It somehow gets even worse if you try to move faster around the AT-AT, and often you can't even see your shadow to guide you. It's insanely hard when it doesn't need to be, and is arguably the most broken mechanic in the game. There's also some notable imbalance across the units available. The V-Wing is objectively the most powerful vehicle in the game, with a rapid-fire mode that turns its cannons into a water hose of death, on top of having cluster missiles as its secondary fire. Meanwhile, A-Wings are fairly useless, as their only major perk is that they move slightly faster than X-Wings. Ironically, the TIE Interceptor is a better A-Wing than the A-Wing itself. None of these aspects are deal-breakers, given this is a single-player only game, but it's just another sign of Rogue Squadron's age. Rogue Squadron is a game I hold a lot of nostalgia for, but when I look at it honestly, it has not aged well, even if it is still a fun little arcade game. Its story is virtually non-existent, its balancing is sloppy and masochistic at best, its limited content won't keep most players entertained for long, and its novelty of being an arcadey Star Wars flight game has worn thin. You can still find some enjoyment in it, but there are better things to spend your money on. You'll get a much more substantial experience with the X-Wing and TIE Fighter series, and you'll get way more content in the Rogue Squadron sequels on GameCube, which is why Rogue Squadron 3D gets a 5.5 out of 10. Damn if that soundtrack doesn't still get stuck in your head, though.
General Reagan!
It's all right, Luke. You held them off long enough. We evacuated everyone just in time, thanks to Captain Solo and Chewbacca. That was never my favorite building anyway.
Hello, Mr. Ford. It's time to go to work.
This is the Conduit. For those who don't know, what is Fathom?
Oh, am I to answer that one? Well, I'll start. It's a action RTS that's set underwater. You know, that's kind of the one-liner. But it's a lot going on in the game. I would say if, you're into Descent, that's kind of one of our inspirations. So it's got that kind of 6 degrees of freedom motion and tries to tie in some RTS elements, with like base building and unit building and even a little bit of unit commanding. So, it's just meant to be kind of a hybrid. We tried to boil it down so it was